Hello everyone, in this video today I'll be doing something a little bit different. This year on my birthday I turned 30. Yikes! Hard to believe. Where did the time go and how did I get here? This video I'll be talking about movies that came out the year I was born in 1993. There were a lot of good movies that came out the year I was born. This is not a ranking video or order video. This is just me talking about random movies I like that came out the year I was born. If I missed any movies that came out the year I was born in 1993, I apologize for that. Like I said, so many great movies that came out in 93, it will take me 6-part videos to talk about every movie from 1993. I'll admit I'm human, I haven't seen every movie that came out that year in 1993. I plan on reviewing some of these movies solo, and some I've already reviewed on my channel. I'll admit, some of these movies I've seen so many times I did not rewatch them. And some of these movies were first time viewing for me for this video. I haven't seen some of these movies in a while, didn't have the time to rewatch all of them, but I'll use my best judgment to explain my brief thoughts on the movie. Some honorable mentions go to True Romance, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, Cliffhanger, Carlito's Way, Menace to Menace, Gettysburg, In the Line of Fire, Dennis the Menace, which I have seen but it just did not make the list. Also, Mel Brooks' Robin Hood Men in Tights. Again, I have seen it, but it just didn't make the list. And Hocus Pocus. Sorry. I've never seen these movies and plan on watching them at some point. Also, Ninja Turtles 3, which I have seen, but I'm not going to talk about it because a lot of other YouTubers pointed out its flaws. It's not worth repeating. Son-in-Law with Pauly Shore. Not worth talking about, but then again, any Pauly Shore movie is not worth my time. I forgot to film this part of the video, so here's a recording of it. Before I dive into these movies, here's some little facts I want to talk about. In 2013, the year I turned 20, I did a little research of what happened the year I was born, and what movies that came out the year, and what events that happened the year I was born. For example, Bill Clinton was president in his first term, Audrey Hepburn, Bill Bixby, and River Phoenix passed away, Michael Jordan won his third championship ring, retired after the death of his father, wanted to be a baseball player. We know how that turned out to be. Joe Carter hit the game-winning World Series home run to help the Toronto Blue Jays win their second championship against the Philadelphia Phillies. Seinfeld, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and Family Matters were highly rated TV show sitcoms. Now that we got that out of the way, let's dive into these movies that came out the year I was born. Rudy. Right off the bat, I want to talk about Rudy. This is my favorite movie of all time. I want to review this movie solo without talking too much about this movie. Here's the funny part. This is my favorite movie of all time, and yet I don't like football at all. I love the story and the character. I can really understand Rudy's personal obstacles, but on a different personal level. It's one of those feel-good movies that reminds you, don't listen to the naysayers, and keep going to pursue your dreams, that anything is possible in life. Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Despite all the live-action Batman movies, believe it or not, this is my favorite Batman movie. Again, I want to review this movie, so I want to keep it brief. Batman is accused of crimes he did not commit being framed by a new villain, the Phantasm. The Phantasm look is awesome, one of the best original Batman villains. This movie also shows that Bruce Wayne was not meant for a love life, and his true calling on was being Batman, vigilante crime fighter to protect Gotham City. When this movie came out, it was not a success. The marketing was bad. No one knew about it, and no one saw it. But in recent years, the film has gained a big following, thankfully. A Bronx Tale. Based on a play by Chaz Palminteri, life up growing in the Bronx in the 1960s. Robert De Niro directed this movie. Despite playing the father, not his usual gangster characters, he takes a backseat in this movie. Well, because he directed most of the film. Chaz Palminteri plays Sonny, a gangster in the Bronx. Despite being a tough gangster, Sonny does have a soft side, especially for the kid he bonds with, mentors him. When the kid first meets Sonny after not turning him in after witnessing a fight, their first conversation was about the Yankees losing the 1960s World Series to the Pirates. He said that he hates Bill Mazeroski. He made Mickey Mantle cry. Sonny says to see Mickey Mantle makes X amount of money. I don't remember exactly, but you get the point. How much does your father make? Who's going to pay the rent? Go ask Mickey Mantle. Nobody cares. How true this is. Not to be political, but you can relate this to politicians in a different way. But anyway, moving on. Chaz Palminteri is great in this movie. Despite playing a gangster, like I said, Sonny's a little bit likable to a certain degree, and is a little bit three-dimensional. He does encourage C to go to school and make sure that he does well in life and stay out of trouble as best as possible, and that he's not hanging around with the wrong crowd, despite the friends that he hangs out with. What I love about this movie is about growing up also for the time it takes place in the 1960s, which it does a good job of capturing that feeling during a crazy time of segregation, civil rights movement, back when interracial couples was not an exception at that time. Sonny tells C color does not matter, as long as two people love each other is all that matters, no matter race, gender, ethnicity, religious beliefs. It's about love, trust, respect, and caring for each other, and being there for each other. I like when Sonny tells C a test on a woman. A lot of people, I have talked to people about this movie, they have tried the test on their girlfriend because of this movie. If she unlocks the car, she's a keeper. If she doesn't unlock the car, dump her. Just when C's friends are about to attack a neighborhood, Sonny saves his life. If he didn't, he would have died in the car with his friends. C tries to thank him, but sadly, Sonny gets shot right in front of his eyes. Back in 2018, I saw this on Broadway, back at my old college. It was fun seeing this on Broadway. Falling Down, one of Joel Schumacher's good movies. This is the kind of movie you watch if you're having a bad day. Michael Douglas plays an average guy who feels mistreated in life and is misunderstood. No one respects him. His boss in society treats him poorly. All he wanted to do was see his daughter and celebrate her birthday. Not only does he have a bad day, he gets involved with a lot of crazy things. Meets a man at the store who was a neo-Nazi. He wanted breakfast at a restaurant that stopped serving breakfast. It was lunchtime. He takes his gun out, shoots it. Then they give him his breakfast until he changes his mind, wanting lunch instead. Very good movie, very crazy and insane. Hot Shots Part Duh. This is the last best movie parody. After that, movie parodies went downhill. This movie made me laugh so hard from start to finish. The first Hot Shots movie was good and funny, but I think this one is much better and funnier than the first movie. I love the jokes in this movie. Lloyd Bridges plays the president, just like Airplane. He's just as funny in this movie as he was in Airplane. It's funny when he's at an event in the White House. They ask him, where's his first lady? And Benson responds, my first lady? I don't know, I've had too many women in my life. I can't keep track of all the women I've dated. Then he vomits while a guy is giving a speech. He sees his dentures, possibly Charlie Sheen plays a parrot in a combo of Rambo and other movie characters that were popular at the time. He has more kills than Rambo according to the video game stats. He's on a boat. He comes across his father, Martin Sheen, spoofing his Apocalypse Now monologue. They're both narrated at the same time. They see and spot each other, point at each other, saying, I loved you in Wall Street! Giving them a thumbs up. Because again, because they were both in Wall Street, both Martin and Charlie Sheen. It also spoofed tons of films like Lady and the Tramp, Casablanca, The Godfather, Rambo 3, No Way Out, Star Wars and Terminator 2, Dances with the Wolves, and a little bit of Robin Hood. I also forgot to mention that it also parodies Basic Instincts. One more thing, when President Benson fights the Saddam Hussein parody actor, it spoofs a combination of Robin Hood and Star Wars. I've been waiting for you, Obi-Wan. We meet again at last. The circle is now complete. Last time I was the learner, now I am the master. Only the master of evil, son of... Your powers are... Your powers are weak, old man. You should not have come back. I should review this movie down the road solo. Poetic Justice. During the coronavirus pandemic, there was nothing to do, just binge watching TV shows or movies. This was a movie I had some familiarity in the past and saw old movie trailers on YouTube back when I was in high school. This was on rent-free on like some streaming service channel at the time when I saw this movie at the time. I'm not sure which one it was. At the time when rapper Tupac was rising with his fame in rap music, he was also making movies. He's not a bad actor, he was just okay. You can basically point out that he's playing himself, basically not sure how people respond to this when I say this. Did he not know the difference between acting and rapping? Janet Jackson does a good job. Her character deals with grief and guilt over the death of her boyfriend, who was shot and killed. She thinks she will never find love again until she meets Tupac's character. Not only does she work, but she also uses poetry getting through her traumatic experience. Basically, poetry is her therapy. Despite her and Tupac's characters driving each other crazy, feeling they have nothing in common, the more they spend time together, they realize they have a lot more in common than they realize. Again, it's been a while since I've seen this movie. I remember they went on some trip or something, but I can't remember what it was and why. It's a little bit of a road trip, love story kind of film. Tombstone. Before seeing this movie for the first time this year, I was familiar with the Doc Holliday story. I'm just not sure why and when I first read about Doc Holliday. I knew that he was a gambler, a dentist, a gunfighter. He had a reputation for being a killer, and he died from tuberculosis back in a time when there was no cure or medicine for TB. Val Kilmer is excellent in this movie as Doc Holliday. He nails the southern accent very well. The real star and big attraction of this movie is Kurt Russell's character. It's a great story on a guy who just wanted happiness to enjoy simple things in life and was not a big materialistic person, and that he felt that his current relationship was not going well anywhere because his wife was a drug addict. He meets Dana Delaney's character and falls in love with her. I'm not the biggest Western fan, but this one is an exception for me. Not to say I'm against Westerns. I didn't watch a lot of Western movies growing up when I was a kid, with few exceptions. Dazed and Confused. This was the 90s American Graffiti. The difference is, this takes place in the 1970s. This movie has an all-star cast of actors who were unknown at the time became future movie stars, like Ben Affleck, Matthew McConaughey, Mila Jovovich. It's one of those movies where you have a group of high school students who are graduating from high school, and they have no idea what they want to do with their lives when they graduate from high school. That's something a good majority of people can relate to. Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. This is a basic biography on famous martial artist, movie star Bruce Lee. I haven't seen this in a long time. I watched it in my senior year of high school and I loved it. Jason Scott Lee did a good job as Bruce Lee, but when I watched this movie, it was hard to tell how true and accurate the movie is based on his life. I've read about Bruce Lee and watched his movies, but I don't know everything about him personally. This movie also came after the death of his son Brandon Lee getting shot on the set of The Crow. Ironically, Brandon Lee was offered to play his dad, but he turned it down. Well, not a perfect movie, but still a decent solid biography film on Bruce Lee. Demolition Man. This is an awesome sci-fi action movie with Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes. Police officer John Spartan is falsely accused of letting hostages die, where Simon Phoenix was the one responsible for killing the hostages already before he was trying to save them. Both John Spartan and Simon Phoenix are sentenced frozen until Simon Phoenix is unfrozen, escapes the police, and decides to unfreeze Spartan so he can stop Phoenix committing crime because of his experience. This is a movie that did not do well when it first came out. After all these years later, this film has been rewatched again in more viewings, and the movie has aged very well. Just think about it. This movie predicted the kind of world we live in today's modern society, but not 100% true, but close enough. People are sensitive, offended easily. During COVID, we had to social distance, no hugs, kisses, no handshakes. But thankfully, we are over that now that the pandemic ended, thankfully. In this universe, the only way people have sex is through some device. This made me think of Woody Allen's orb from Sleepers, or virtual reality, or heck, who the heck knows? We could have in the future AI sex or artificial intelligent girlfriends. That scares me, and that would be weird. When me and my dad watched this movie, because he had never seen this movie until now, he compared Wesley Snipes' performance as Joker, which never occurred to me, I never thought about until now. In a way, this could be as an alternate timeline if Batman did not wear his mask and cape and worked for the police law enforcement, and that Simon Phoenix would be the Joker in this movie, or their version. When Simon Phoenix is unfrozen, he feels bored because of how different the world is and different than what he remembers. He takes advantage and wanted to commit more crimes, since the police are not trained for violent situations like they were back in the 90s. As Nostalgia Critic pointed out, when Stallone shouts his name, he pointed out he says that it sounds like he's saying penis instead of phoenix. Dicks! Sandra Bullock does a good job in this movie. Despite being a 21st century woman, she's a nostalgia person that has a fascination with the 20th century. Think about it. There's a lot of people in today's modern world who are into 1980s pop culture. I fit in that category. But I don't say stupid, incorrect one-liners like she does. Sylvester Stallone is also fun and awesome to watch in this movie. He's also funny. It's funny when he wakes up unfrozen, learning how the future is different, the world has changed than what he remembers. When he finds out that smoke is illegal, his response is, and this makes him angry, saying, "Are you shitting me?" And he learns that if you curse, you get a fine for that. He learns to knit and worries about this taking away his masculinity or tough guy, badass personalities. Dennis Leary has a small part in this movie, playing one of the underground people, and plays himself when he rants about freedom of speech out of something this would be like something out of his stand-up routine, where he rants about he wants to have sex, run around naked, eat high cholesterol, and smoke Cuban cigars. I'm not saying exactly everything he said, but you get the point idea. Watch the clip. Not to get off topic, this will come as a shock and a surprise to you about, in all my 30 years of existence, I have never had Taco Bell in my life. I kid you not. Thankfully, Taco Bell is not the only fast food restaurant. That would maybe be sad and boring. Or how predicted that abortions would become illegal, especially how last year Roe v. Wade was overturned. Instead of LA, it's called SA, San Angeles. That slang doesn't make any sense. Everything is peaceful, quiet, crime is down. But unfortunately, with all the crazy incidents we've had, you can debate and argue that things have gotten crazier and worse in crime than ever before. Especially how we've had a lot of crazy riots and gun shootouts the last 20 years. Even though I was only little and a baby in the 90s from reading about the 90s, I know and understand that Los Angeles, California in the early mid-90s, Los Angeles had a lot of violent riots at the time when this movie came out. The seashell theory, toilet paper theory. You're probably wondering, what are my theories on the seashell toilet paper? I honestly don't know myself, cannot tell you. Plus, there's probably better YouTubers online who have a better opinion theory about it than I would. Again, though, during COVID, there were memes when no toilet paper was not available at the time when they used the seashell as memes. If no toilet paper, just use seashells instead. The Good Son. After Macaulay Culkin's rise to fame as Kevin McAllister in the Home Alone movies, he plays an evil little devil bastard who kills. I saw this once and first learned about this movie from the Nostalgia Critic. I thought it was okay. But I don't know if a movie like this would be made today. Elijah Wood's character Mark's mother dies. He's adopted by his aunt and uncle. He hangs out with his cousin, forms a brotherly bond, but finds out he's crazy and likes to kill for fun. His cousin has mental issues. This movie is like a modern-day 90s semi-remake to The Bad Seed from 1956 in reverse. In The Bad Seed, the little girl was the killer. In this movie, the boy is the killer. Seeing Macaulay Culkin playing a child killer makes my child go away when he said, "Don't fuck with me, Mark." Seeing this makes me think if he used the weapons in Home Alone, Marv and Harry would be dead. Besides this movie being on child killers, it's a little bit about grief, seeing how his mother died was a big, sad, tragic event in his life. Wish he could have done more to save his mother, but sadly he could not. Not in her condition. The Sandlot. I will review this movie soon on my YouTube channel. Stay tuned for that. I will say, this movie was one of my first love and childhood movies that got me into loving baseball. Rookie of the Year. I wanted to review this movie this year, and I will do a review of the movie next year. But here's a little brief analysis of the movie. 12-year-old Henry Rolling Gardner breaks his arm. After the injury, he somehow mysteriously can throw 100 miles per hour. He goes to a Cubs game with his friends, throws the ball back to the field, and the Cubs owner wants to sign him. At first, he struggles after being mentored by Chet Steadman, played by Gary Busey, nicknamed the Rocket, a homage to Roger Clemens, who was nicknamed the Rocket, who's a veteran pitcher who seems to be winding down with his career because of arm injuries. Despite his success being a baseball player, like anything else, it does show that fame does have its pros and cons and side effects. Henry realizes being a young baseball player at 12-year-old is forcing him to grow up too fast, where he should be just a kid, focusing on being a kid and finishing school and other things, and doing kid stuff. I like to see when Chet gives him advice on how to take the game seriously, because one day his gift will be gone. Despite how we've had lots of gifted athletes, but sadly, they get old and lose it and retire, just like anything else. Daniel Stern, who you all recognize as Marv from Home Alone, plays this funny, goofy pitching coach. I always laugh when he accidentally locks himself at the wrong place at the wrong time. He gets stuck and left behind. Oh boy. Oh boy. They're out now. I met Thomas Ian Nicholson last year at Chiller Theater. I told him how this is one of my favorite childhood movies, but sadly, I'm not a Cubs fan. Sorry, but I was happy to see them win a World Series in 2016. Hats off to them, they deserved it. And the Cubs finally did win a World Series 20 years later in 2016 in real life. Back to the Future Part 2 was almost close, off by 1 year, but still, they were close. On a personal note, this is a movie I used to love watching with my older sisters and my grandmothers when I used to go to her house as a little kid when I used to visit her. So yeah, a little nostalgia for me. Wayne's World 2, it may not be as good or funny as the first movie, but it still has a few good laughs. It's funny when Wayne is trying to stop Cassandra marrying Christopher Walken, they spoof The Graduate. Before I saw The Graduate, this was my intro to knowing about the ending. Wayne stops at a gas station talking to a gas station attendant about a woman he once loved, till Wayne breaks the fourth wall saying, "Wait a minute, we get a better actor. I know it's a small part." He replaces the bad actor with Charlton Heston. James Hogg, you all recognize from the recent Academy Award movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, spoofing the martial arts genre when Wayne and Cassandra's dead fight. It's funny when Garth is being seduced by Kim Basinger, spoofing female fatale like in Double Indemnity, where she wants Garth to kill her husband so she can be with him. Red flags, run away. Chris Farley has a small part in this movie, but he's still funny as usual. It's also funny when Wayne and Garth meet Aerosmith after a rock concert. They're excited, they're like, we're not worthy, we're not worthy. And Aerosmith responds, you're worthy, get up. Last Action Hero. This is a movie that got a bad rep when it first came out, but now it seems to have a cult following. This movie's basically a parody of action movies from like the 80s and early 90s. It has its funny moments. Like, I thought it was funny when Arnold kicks the guy in the ball saying, "You want to be a farmer? Here's a couple of acres." When they go to the video store, instead of Arnold Schwarzenegger on the Terminator 2 movie poster, it's Sylvester Stallone. Arnold Schwarzenegger is basically not acting, he's playing himself. It was also funny like how he like parodies his famous line, "I'll be back." Ha! You didn't know I was going to say that. You say that all the time. I do. Homeward Bound. Two cats and a dog are left on a farm while the family goes away on vacation. They decide to walk back home and they have a journey. Along the journey, they come fight a lion. Sassy gets lost through a river canal, and then she's found later by chance and shadow. Before CGI overmouths, they dubbed the voices of Sally Field, Michael J. Fox, and Don Amici over the animals. This was Don Amici's last movie before he died. Jurassic Park. I already reviewed this movie back in June for its anniversary. I'll be repeating myself a little bit. Great dinosaur film, excellent special effects with a combo of practical and CGI done right. Grumpy Old Men. Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau play two middle-aged old men who have been rivals for a long time, and they have a complicated relationship. They argue over stupid little things like they were brothers. Jack Lemmon falls in love with Anne Bancroft's character, a new neighbor who moves into town, and Walter Matthau is jealous of dating her. He wants her all to himself, but she really falls in love with and goes for Jack Lemmon's character. Burgess Meredith plays Jack Lemmon's father. He's funny and great. Seeing Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau argue, fight, and insult each other, they were like Abbott and Costello or Laurel and Hardy. Growing up, I was a fan of The Odd Couple and was into Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau's movies after seeing The Odd Couple. I was curious on their other movies, but I saw this movie later as a teenager. Free Willy. It's about Jesse who's a troublemaker. After breaking into an aquarium, he's forced to do community service to clean up his mess. After helping clean up his mess, he becomes friends with a whale, and he develops a bond with Willie, and he works at the aquarium. These kind of movies were so common big in the 90s. You had a troubled kid, then he befriends an animal who changes his life, and he learns to connect with nature. I used to like watching the sequels at my grandmother's house when I was a little kid, but it's been a long time since I saw those movies. And yes, I am aware now there was a fourth Free Willy movie from 2010 with Steve Irwin's daughter. But I never saw it. Jesse and Randolph were not in it. That movie came out past my time. I was in high school in 2010 when that movie came out. I wasn't in a rush to go see it. I'm probably never going to see it ever in my life. Untamed Hard. This is another movie I watched during COVID. Haven't seen a lot of Marissa Tomei movie. This is one I never saw before until like 2 years ago. Marissa Tomei plays a Minnesota waitress who has relationship issues. One night she's walking home from work, she was almost raped. One of her co-workers at her job, played by Christian Slater, who hardly speaks and is very shy and quiet, saves her life. It's basically a movie where she did not expect to fall in love with a guy who seems to be weird, awkward, and thinks they're not the right fit for each other, but in a weird way and strange, their relationship works somehow. But there's also a little twist to this movie. Christian Slater's character has a bad heart condition, and he could die unless he gets an organ donor heart transplant. But sadly, he never gets it and he dies. When I rewatched this movie a while back, it made me think how at the time, I saw this movie before my good friend Chris Mano died a few months later after seeing this movie. Cool Runnings, based on the 1987 Jamaican bobsled team that won the gold sled Olympic gold medal. This is one of my favorite Disney movies as a little kid, despite I don't know anything about the sport of bobsledding. I don't know all the facts about this story, but of course, the comedy part was not true. It was just added for laughs because it was a Disney movie. This is one of the few times I saw John Candy was not the funny guy, instead he was the straight guy. Watching this movie saddens me how we lost John Candy too soon. This movie also reminds me how very talented he was. The Fugitive. Despite mentioning this movie, I'm not gonna lie, I've only seen parts of this movie. I've never seen all the way through from start to finish, but I am aware this is a remake to the 1960s TV show The Fugitive. I will watch this movie from start to finish at some point, give it a solo review. I apologize for not watching this video, just very busy. This is a semi-honorable mention. Mrs. Doubtfire. This is one of my all-time favorite comedy movies ever. But again, future review on this. This is a funny Robin Williams movie in which he plays Daniel Hillard, a difficult actor who quits his job because of a disagreement with the director. After throwing a wild birthday party for his 12-year-old son, his wife divorces him due to his lack of responsibility and does not have a stable job. Daniel only has limited visitation rights with his children on Saturdays only. Miranda decides to hire a nanny, and Daniel poses as Mrs. Doubtfire so he can see his kids every day. No matter how many times I've seen this movie, it still makes me laugh. When he does a voice impersonation of the employment agency, I do a good impersonation of a hot dog. The disaster kitchen dinner being ruined, having to order takeout, Mrs. Doubtfire insulting, playing tricks on Miranda's boyfriend Stu, putting hot spicy food in Stu's jambalaya, hot jambalaya. After all those scotches, I had to piss like a racehorse. Anytime I'm feeling down, upset, depressed, and worried about my life, Mrs. Doubtfire is my go-to comfort movie that makes me feel safe. As much as I want to talk more about this movie, this will be a future movie review at some point. Groundhog Day. Despite this movie's popularity, it will shock you when I say this that I saw this movie later in my life when I was 25. It's about a mean reporter goes to the town of Pennsylvania, the town celebrating the holiday Groundhog Day, for if the groundhog sees his shadow or not, either early spring or 6 more weeks of winter. For no explanation, he wakes up every morning the same day repeating itself. Bill Murray's funny. His character's a jerk sometimes, but he learns to become nicer, and that's what breaks the curse. Not one of my favorite movies, but it's an okay movie that I thought was alright. Sleepless in Seattle. This movie is basically a semi-remake to An Affair to Remember from 1957 with Cary Grant and Deborah Kerr. It has the same similar plot elements as An Affair to Remember. Tom Hanks' wife dies, and his son is trying to help him find a wife so he can be happy and would like to have another mother in his life. His son thinks family is not complete when there is no mother in the picture. It's one of those iconic movies if you never saw it, you're familiar with the movie's visuals, famous movie moments, and quotes. The Nightmare Before Christmas. This will be an upcoming future movie review. I don't want to give too much away on this one. I like how this movie is neutral. I'm watching this anytime, either on Christmas or Halloween. This is one of the first intros to learning about film history and what German expressionism was before I took film classes. Jack Skellington is tired of Halloween, discovers Christmas land, and wants to be Santa Claus. But when Jack Skellington tries to be Santa Claus, instead of being a happy, jolly Santa Claus, he scares children instead. Again, future movie review on this. I don't want to talk too much about it right now. Matinee. I already did a review on this movie, link in the description. But again, I'm going to be repeating myself, like I said in the solo review. What I love about this movie is the nostalgia. It's a great movie paying tribute to 1950s and 1960s sci-fi movies. John Goodman is great as Woolsey, paying tribute to the horror film director William Castle. The Addams Family Values. This is a sequel to the 1991 Addams Family movie. This may not top the first one, but I find this to be a very decent, solid follow-up sequel. Even though I've seen this movie before, I rarely saw this one as a kid. Because I only had the first one on VHS tape as a kid and only saw this movie on cable TV a few times, and sometimes on rare occasions. I will watch this in the first one back to back for a small mini-marathon, depending on my mood. People spoof and use memes of Wednesday Addams and that girl who played Harmony on Buffy the Vampire Slayer when she asked her, "Why are you all dressed in black? Look like you're going to a funeral," or the scene when they are reenacting the first Thanksgiving. Uncle Fester marries Joan Cusack's character, but only wanted to marry him for his fortune. Gomez and Morticia Addams have a new baby. This leads to Wednesday and Pugsley jealous. They try to kill the baby. After that, they are sent to camp, thinking it will help them change and grow up a little bit. Gomez is having a nervous breakdown. His whole world is falling apart until he realizes that they made wrong decisions. Well, not a perfect movie. This one is okay. I haven't seen this in a while, so I can't really comment or say much more about this movie. Philadelphia. This movie came out in the early 90s during the AIDS epidemic, and when former basketball player Magic Johnson announced his retirement from basketball 2 years prior because he tested positive for HIV. Ryan White died in 1990 after this movie came out 3 years later after his death. Tom Hanks plays a lawyer who was fired from the firm because he was HIV positive. He wants to sue the law firm thinking that he was fired because he was gay and he had AIDS. The firm denies it, but as usual, there's always a rat and some kind of corruption involved and a little bit of a ripoff. Denzel Washington plays his lawyer suing the firm. Despite helping Tom Hanks' character is homophobic, but puts his differences aside to help him as best as possible to win a case that no one should be fired because of sexuality. A great scene Tom Hanks is playing opera and explains to Denzel's character what the opera was all about. This scene, my mom hates opera, yet she likes this scene for some reason. I can't explain why that is. I remember watching this movie before COVID got bad. This movie shows how much has changed the last 30 years. There's still no cure for AIDS, but thankfully they have a lot of better medicine options to help people who have AIDS live longer. When I was watching this movie with my dad, being a medical doctor that he is, he was explaining to me that what the schedule of an AIDS patient medicine timing was. They eventually found out AIDS is not contagious, that the only way you can get AIDS is through sexually transmitted fluids. Also, people thought only gays got AIDS, but that also was a myth. My dad said back in the 80s when he was working in the hospital as an intern doctor, he said most of his patients were heterosexual drug addict junkies, and he only had a few gay AIDS patients. The Super Mario Brothers movie. Okay, this is not one of my favorite movies. It's not a good movie, but worth mentioning this movie for a reason. With the recent release of the new Super Mario Brothers movie this past year, there was an original live-action one from the 90s that really sucked. When the new Super Mario Bros. Movie came out this year, I wanted to possibly do a review of this movie around that time. when the new one came out, but then I figured, nah, too many YouTubers have already pointed out the flaws, and that's why it's bad. Also, was not desperate or interested in seeing the new Mario Brothers movie, because I'm not really into video games, but had played some basic Mario games as a kid. I saw this movie once with a friend of mine from high school, and from what I saw at the time, it was bad and it sucked. It was over the top and insulted fans who loved the Mario Brothers video game. Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo are good actors, but they are bad in this movie. Dennis Hopper sucked and it's over the top in this movie. There's not much else I have to say about this movie. Bad movie and an insult to the video game, that's all I can say. Army of Darkness. This one is debatable on whether or not did this movie come out in 1992 or 1993, or maybe between the third movie and Sam Raimi's Evil Dead trilogy. I love this movie. It's funny, epic, fun, and awesome. Cool stop-motion animation attributed to Jason the Argonaut. There will be a future review on all the Evil Dead franchise in the future. My Life, the same guys that did Ghost with Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore. Michael Keaton plays a man who's dying of cancer. Him and his wife are expecting their firstborn child. Because of not knowing how long he will be around, he makes videotapes for his son to see when his son gets older, to make sure that he's not forget about and learn about who his father was. Also give him life lesson because he will not be around to tell him, so the tapes will be his resource. He has an estranged relationship with his family. Again, Michael Keaton is another fantastic, talented, well-rounded actor who could be more than just a funny guy. The Firm. This is a movie that I was familiar with story premise and themes of the movie, and based on a John Grisham book, and it took me a long time to finally see this movie. Tom Cruise plays a graduate lawyer who works at a law firm that has a reputation to be one of the best law firms. Despite having it all, a good life, paying job, a nice car, and a house, and a great upper-class life, while working at the firm, he finds out the firm is corrupt and has been doing illegal stuff for a long time. This movie shows how having everything in the good life does have its drawbacks and side effects. Tom Cruise is great in this movie. A lot of good character actors in this movie. Tobin Bell, who you all recognize as Jigsaw from the Saw horror movies, plays one of the firm's henchmen. Gary Busey and Hank from Breaking Bad. Excellent movie, great acting, story, and themes on the good life of having its cons, like anything else in life. Alive, based on a true story about a rugby team whose plane crashes in the mountains. To survive, they had no choice but to eat their dead friend's flesh corpse to live. The first time I heard about this story and saw it, it was very brutal and hard to watch. It wasn't easy to see them eat their dead friends being cannibals to survive. If you don't have the stomach for this kind of movie, the survival of the fittest, skip it. Yeah, I'm not going to go into too much detail on this movie. Moving on. Leprechaun horror movie. I'm not going to lie, I'm not really into this movie or the Leprechaun series. I know this movie and the series has a big cult following. For me, I never really got into them. I have respect for people who enjoy this movie for the comedy and campiness. That's fine. Even sometimes I enjoy cheesy bad movies, but I have my limits sometimes. I don't hate this movie. It's not a go-to horror movie for me. I can't remember the last time I rewatched this movie. A very young and unknown Jennifer Aniston was in this movie before a big breakout on the comedy TV show Friends. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I only saw a few episodes of Friends. I didn't hate that show. I wasn't really big or into it. I was more of a Seinfeld fan than I was for Friends. Funny how Warwick Davis plays the killer leprechaun. He played an Ewok in Return of the Jedi. They don't explain what he wants with his pot of lost gold. A kid says a funny one-liner that feels like something out of an action hero movie. Fuck you, Lucky Charms. The sequels got more ridiculous in this movie. The leprechaun goes to space and the hood. I know they made another one not that long ago. I'm not sure if it's a sequel or a reboot. I don't have much else to say about this movie. A stupid, cheesy comedy horror movie that didn't do much for me, despite its big cult following. So that just about wraps it up. Hope you liked the video, subscribe, hit that bell button, and wish me a happy birthday in the comments. See you next time. Leave a comment letting me know what other movies you like that came out the year in 1993, the year I was born. And also, what other events happened in the year 1993 that I missed out on in this video?